webinar. Enough with this technical stuff. I'm going to introduce my guest. Today, I'm hosting Marcus Cauchi, who is an experienced trainer for Sandler Training, a renowned organization for sales leaders. Today, we're going to talk about how to grow a company, how to drive the company into a hypergrowth using very smart sales approach and building solid sales departments. So, Marcus, could you bring your topic closer to our audience and share your expertise today?
Of course. Thank you for having me. My name's Marcus Cauchi. I'm from Sandler Training. I've been a licensed franchisee with them for 15 years, and I've helped my clients grow their businesses by over £500 million over that time. And I specialize in working with scale-ups and turnarounds. My preference is in the mid-market because they seem to be very underserviced, and they're the ones who can really enjoy 300, 400, 500, 1200% growth. And it really has a huge impact. In order to do that, they need to put in place a number of things. They need to have a good strategy, good systems, good structure. They need to train and develop their people, and especially their managers, and they need to recruit the best people. So I operate in the direct sales, indirect sales, and enterprise sales space, and I also work with my clients helping them to hire predictively. So instead of hiring someone they think is James Bond, but actually turns out to be Mr. Bean, they actually hire James Bond. So helping them build high-performance sales teams and management teams.
All right. So, Marcus, could you also deliver your presentation and share several advice? Of course, you're not going to share everything, but
okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my mind map so that you guys can follow along.
Yes, Marcus, you have disappeared.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I do.
That's right. Fine. Okay. Sorry about that. We'll need to edit that out. Okay. So hypergrowth. Hypergrowth is growing by over 100% in my book. I mean, a lot of governments talk about 20, 30% being hypergrowth. I would consider that relatively pedestrian. In order to grow a business fast, you need to have in place some key systems and processes, but it all starts with passion and mindset. Mindset is about making sure that you understand that you have the right to grow your business, first of all, and that you have rights in the sales process. Sadly, most salespeople don't understand that they have rights, so they give them away. They abdicate control to their prospect, and they put the customer on a pedestal instead of understanding that they have equal business stature. Even on your worst day, you are never more than or less than your prospect's equal. They have the problem, and you have the valuable solution to their problem. Now, in order to be able to sell with that mindset, you have to have a strong self-concept. Your self-concept means that you can look yourself in the eye in the mirror and be happy with who you are. Your role function is something that you do. Your self-concept, your identity is who you are. And unless you have a strong self-concept in sales and as a business leader, chances are you will find a way to undermine yourself, to self-sabotage. You also need to have a strong money concept. Very few organizations scale massively by being cheap as chips. If you're racing to the bottom on price, you have to work very, very hard to grow. You might grow revenue, but you're not going to grow profit. And what you keep matters more than what you make. So the emphasis is on taking your profit. And in fact, straight after this seminar, I'm interviewing Mike Michalowicz, who is the author of Profit First. And he talks in his book about the concept of taking the profit out first and then using whatever's left in order to run your business. And I think that's a very healthy money concept. The issue around parity is also really key. Your ability to understand that you are your prospects equal, no matter what, allows you to sell freely and to eliminate that what we call head trash. Head trash is that voice in your head that tells you you can't say that that if I do this, they won't love me, being emotionally attached to the outcome, worrying about being liked, all that rubbish. Mindset is also about commitment. Commitment is doing the stuff that you need to do, even when you don't feel like doing it. And in order to do that, you need to understand why you're doing it. And that's your purpose. That's where your passion, the fire comes from. And it takes courage to do what you fear. You have to be ready to do what makes you uncomfortable and do so consistently. And to put clear in your own mind what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it, for whom you're doing it, and to make sure that you communicate that clearly as well. And always recognize your own shortcomings. Failure is not a personality defect. It's universal. It's unavoidable. It's part of the human condition. And if you see failure as a personality defect, you'll be afraid to take risks. If you see failure just as feedback and an opportunity to learn, then you won't be afraid to surround yourself with great people where the strengths of your team make individual weaknesses irrelevant. And this, again, is a hugely important part of growing a business at massive scale. The next thing is you need to be able to communicate effectively, and you need to understand empowered communication. The majority of relationships that people have are built on and designed around a power play and psychological gameplay, where you either take the position of the victim, why me, it's so unfair, this always happens to me, save me, or the persecutor, you piece of, you're always, you never, you should. And it's very diminishing when someone talks to you and behaves like that towards you. And that's called the persecutor position. And then you have the rescuer. Rescuing is helping without boundaries or without permission. It's where you're mollycoddling, where you're permissive. You allow bad behavior, non-performance. You tolerate the intolerable. And by doing that, what you end up then starting to believe is that no one can do it as well as you. So then you start to micromanage and you start to disempower your people that way as well. So it's really important to operate from the opposite end, and we call that the winner's triangle. The winner's triangle is all about being vulnerable, being nurturing and empathic, being assertive. So an example of the drama triangle is you're running late and you say, it's not my fault. The sat-nav took me in all the wrong direction. I was doing my best. Now, if someone says that to you, you kind of feel that they're trying to wriggle out of taking responsibility. If, on the other hand, you operate from the winner's triangle, you say something along the lines of, Margot, I'm so sorry. It's entirely my fault. I misjudged the traffic and I left late. You must be upset with me. Would you like me to turn around and we can cancel our meeting and I'll just have to chalk it up to experience? I hope you can forgive me. And there's a huge difference in terms of how the person receiving that communication feels. When you're under pressure, operating from that winner's triangle is very difficult because your natural tendency is to be attached to the outcome. Your natural tendency is not to want to lose, not to want to fail, to be seen to be more professional than perhaps you are. Being vulnerable and assertive is an incredibly strong position to take. And the best leaders are able to operate as vulnerable, which means that they take the risk of being hurt, but they do it anyway, even though it may pain them to do so, and they may be in fear of doing it, but they do it anyway. And they're disarmingly honest. My rule is always tell the truth. If you tell the truth, then you don't have to remember anything. If you tell a prospect, I have to be honest with you, I don't think that we are right for you. Let me tell you why. That's very engaging, and it builds trust, it builds credibility. If you're going to make a promise, make sure you intend to keep it. And if there's a problem, confess up front that there's a problem. Always encourage your prospect to say no to you, not to say yes to you. Don't try and convince them. You cannot convince anybody of anything ever. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Now, the flip side of that is prospects never argue with their own data. What's really important is to ask the right questions. Ask difficult, challenging, insightful questions that enable the prospect to diagnose the problem for themselves. Because the problem they bring you is never the real problem. They always bring you a symptom, or they bring you nirvana. We'd like our salespeople to be closing 80%. Or we'd like our salespeople to be making more prospecting calls. Or, our sales, we're not closing as much as we ought to. Those are symptoms or the ideal outcome. They don't really look at the root cause. And it's our job in sales and in leadership and management to understand the cause of problems and solve them. And without clarity, you end up creating confusion, ambiguity. And in organizations, that leads to politics. In a sales environment, ambiguity leads to broken trust. So if you want to scale and take people along with you and grow your business, it's critical that you are disarmingly honest and you are clear in your communication. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a minute. It's very important that you have a clear strategy. You know where you're headed, you know where you're coming from, and you know how you're going to get there. That doesn't mean that you're looking at a lot of numbers on a spreadsheet. What it does mean is you're focused on behavior. Behavior is the only thing you have that you can control. You can't control the result. Having a lot of numbers on a spreadsheet does not mean this is going to occur. You don't control the decision. The prospect does. Your salespeople and your staff come to work for their reasons, not your reasons. So if you want to be able to grow a business of significance and do so rapidly without losing control, you have to have a plan. And on an individual basis, everybody in the organization needs a behavioral cookbook. A cookbook is a behavioral recipe book that identifies exactly what each person needs to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis in order to achieve the objectives that you are all working towards. And I come back to clarity. Having unified common purpose is also critical. So you need to make sure that everyone understands what they're contributing to the overall common objective. The cookbook is something that you design by working backwards from the end result. So if you want to do $1.2 million in sales, backwards from there and work out that that's $100,000 a month. If your average order value is $20,000 per order, then you know you need 5 orders that come over the line in order to achieve your objective. If you know that your conversion rate is 1 in 3 at final stage, then you need 15 opportunities at final stage each month in order to ensure that you're going to get over hit your target. 9 to get over the line. And then how many meetings do you have in order to get there? So is it a 2-call close or a 3-call close or a 5-call close? You need to work those metrics back down to the daily behavior of unique, effective conversations. Not the number of dials, because that's a lag indicator, not the revenue, not the profit, not the number of proposals, but daily, unique, effective conversations. Daily, unique, effective conversations we define as you make the call, you get past the gatekeeper, you get through to the decision maker, you agree a contract that you will deliver your 30-second commercial, at the end of which they will decide if you talk further for 2 more minutes. And that would sound something like, Margot, this is a cold call. Let me tell you in 30 seconds why I'm calling, and then you can decide whether to hang up or talk for 2 more minutes. Does that sound reasonable? Now, if you engage at that point 5 times a day, for most of the clients that I work with, that's sufficient for them to grow by well over 100%. Now, to do that, you need to have a clear understanding and a structured sales approach. You need to have a plan for sales, operations, financial, for recruitment, supply chain, partnerships, and channel. You need to understand how you're going to backfill. Excuse me. If you win a piece of business, you want to be able to predict when that business is coming in so that you can fill the vacancies that you're going to need in advance. Managers need a cookbook that looks at recruitment, recruiting a bench of candidates. Prospecting for candidates is a manager's equivalent of a salesperson prospecting for new business. And recruitment is their single most important job. They should be recruiting daily. They should be interviewing candidates on a regular basis, every single day, every week, every month, without fail and no excuses. It is their number one job. It's not an interruption to their job. Writing a spreadsheet and writing reports is not their number one job. They have 2 functions in life, managers: hire the best people and get the best out of them. And the leader of the business needs to be ready to identify well in advance what resources they are likely to need before they need them, so that they're not reacting. Because if they're reacting, they will always find themselves in peak and trough, feast and famine, feast and famine. It's really important that sales, operations, finance, marketing, supply chain are all in alignment. If you're going to scale at massive rates, you need to make sure that you're planning ahead. I think it was the Battle of Austerlitz. Napoleon had planned 2 years in advance which general would surrender to him at which village 2 years before a French soldier left French soil. And he planned for every eventuality. Planning is the important part. The plan is not important. The planning is. The planning allows you to prepare for different contingencies, for different changes in your market, for difficulties that you might have along the way, objections that you might come up against. And you need to be able to ensure that you're prepared for every eventuality you can plan for, so that if something happens that you haven't planned for, then you've got breathing space. Now, another area that's really important is to focus on the customer. You are in business because of the customer, not in spite of them. And many organizations forget this. They forget that the customer is not king. The customer is never more than your equal. But you need to be able to ensure that you understand that the customer is how you make your living. It's how you bring revenue and profit into your business. You exist because of them. So you need to understand who is your ideal customer. And that means you need to design your ideal customer. If you do not design them, then chances are you will take on anybody. And I believe who you say no to is more important than who you say yes to. You need to be able to focus on servicing and serving your customer incredibly well. And the customer experience is central to everything that you do. Customer experience in most people's minds means customer service. And that's normally customer complaints. That's not customer experience. Customer experience is anything that touches the customer prior to them buying from you, your brand, the experience they have when they view your website, when they read your content or collateral, every engagement they have with any of your people, whether it's direct or indirect. the experience they have buying from you, the experience they have transacting with you, dealing with your finance people, dealing with your invoicing, your written communications, your verbal communications, how they feel. Do they feel valued, appreciated? Are they the center of your attention? Or are your people distracted and thinking about what they're having for supper or the row they had with their wife? The challenge here is to ensure that you are always putting the customer right at the heart of everything that you do. Because the reality is that you're going to make a lot more money by selling to your existing customers than you are by going out and finding new ones in a relatively established, mature business. And if you want to scale, you're going to find that scale come from your existing customers. I was recently with a customer of mine, and it was our first session, and they were sweating blood over growing by 12%. And I took them through what we call the CARE model. CARE stands for keep, attain, recapture, and expand. And keep accounts are ones that pay you good money. They're decent customers, but there's no growth potential. They just need to be babysat. An attain customer is a new logo. They're someone that you go out, you hunt, you bring home. It's the first time you've done business. You win them from cold. And normally you'll be taking them from a competitor. Recapture means that you go back to a lapsed customer. It may be that they haven't done business with you for a while. It could be that you haven't paid enough attention. It could be that someone new in senior management came in and brought in their favorites and you were displaced, or you were just outsold. And then expand. Expand is where you will see massive growth. Now, this customer of mine was sweating blood over a 12% growth target. When we took them through this segmentation exercise, we identified over 150% growth potential just within their top 20% existing accounts. 150% that sat there that they've been leaving on the table. So if you know who your ideal customer is and you've designed them well, and you understand how to create messaging that speaks to them at every level within their organization, from the CEO, the CFO, the chief marketing officer, the chief sales officer, operations, logistics, finance, legal, and you're able to address pain within that organization, then you're able to identify ways to expand that account. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more depth in a moment. You need to have a market. Are you going direct? Are you going via channel partners? Are you going internet only? How are you going to reach your customer base? You need to have a clear strategy for each of those. And if you're going direct, how are you going to get to them? Are you going to get to them through content marketing? Are you going to get to them through telemarketing and prospecting by phone? Are you going to get to them through direct mail? Are you going to get through referrals and referral partnerships? Are you going to get referred through your existing customer base? PR, channel? It's, again, really important to understand that if you're going to sell through distribution, that your distribution channel are your customers. You need to put them at the center of your customer experience because they bring you the revenue. It's your responsibility to make sure that if you're going to scale through the channel, and often that is the best way to scale a business by 300% or more, it's to make sure that you are partner focused, you're partner centric. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later as well. Now, once you've got a strategy in place, do you have the right structure? Do you have the right people doing the right things in the right way with the right people on the prospect side or the partner side at the right time? It's very important that you have a structured, ongoing recruitment process. So you're building a bench of candidates. Where you're building a bench of candidates means that you're constantly recruiting because A players in sales certainly are roughly 1 in 200 candidates. Somewhere between 6 and 12% 6 and 12 in 200 are going to be B players, good B players with A potential. And the rest are C players and worse. What passes for average in sales is not particularly inspiring. So it makes sense to build a bench of good salespeople and speak to them along these lines. Margot, I haven't got a job for you at the moment. How much of candidates? So when I do have a vacancy, if I come to you and I offer you the job, is there any reason why you wouldn't accept it? And you're very clear, you're very honest, and what you're doing is you're building the bench, you're building the relationship with these people, so you've got 5 or more people for each critical role that you know that you're going to need in the future. If someone gets hit by a bus or gets headhunted or leaves or you have to fire them, then you've got 5 people backed up to take on that role. So instead of taking 4 to 6 to 12 months to fill the vacancy, it takes you 1, which is their notice period. Now, when you think about it, it's a money-generating activity, building a bench, because instead of taking 4 months and costing you £400,000 in opportunity cost, it costs you £100,000 in opportunity cost, and you generate £300,000 by getting them up to speed effectively. You need to have a structured sales approach. Naturally, I'm very partisan. I believe our sales methodology is substantially better than others, but you don't have to take my word for it. Research suggested that 50% more salespeople hit their quota when they were trained by us than any other sales methodology. And we've maintained that position. What's really interesting is CSO Insights in 2018 and Salesforce in 2018 predict that less than 50% of salespeople globally will hit their quota in 2019. Salesforce says 57% will miss quota. Now, this is the first time in documented history where less than 50% will hit their quota. Now, if you take those statistics and you apply our 50% more, that's still 75% hitting target. That's way better than less than 50%. And think about what that would cost you in terms of opportunity cost and how much that would impact you in terms of scaling up if your sales reps are missing target. Now, you need to have a structured sales approach for direct sales. You need to have an enterprise selling methodology. And if you're going through partners, you need to teach your channel how to sell your product. And let's face it, the majority of partners, they're not sales organizations. They're typically very good technicians. They're very often technically very strong implementers, systems integrators, managed service providers. They could be accountants. They could, whatever your channel is, whatever it is that you're selling, very often you're selling through technicians. And you need to teach them how to sell. You need to coach them. You need to deal midwife so that it's easy for them to grow their business. Because remember, they are coin operated. They are in business for themselves, for their reasons. Their salespeople come to sales. And so you need to be able to understand why they're selling and help them to do so. There needs to be a cadence of accountability, a cadence of coaching. And that's a structured approach to making sure that everybody owns their piece of responsibility for doing what's necessary. It's also a manager's job to coach their people. Coaching is not something that you do when you have time. Coaching is central to every manager's function. Managers have to recruit. They have to supervise, coach, and mentor. And they have to report. But the most important function, I believe, is recruitment, followed by coaching. Where organizations have managers who coach, they invariably outsell their rivals who don't. You need to have strong systems to scale and achieve hypergrowth. You need to have systems to attract candidates, to attract prospects, to attract partners. You need to have systems that allow you to engage in a systematic, structured manner so it's controllable. You need to have systems for prospecting and filling the pipeline, and for disqualifying opportunities early and qualifying in and advancing good opportunities or good candidates. You need to be able to manage the velocity of your pipeline. You need to be able to have a system for selling that's reliable and predictable and scalable, and that everybody shares. You need to have an onboarding system, a system that takes a new hire or a new partner over the first 120 days through a process of understanding what they need to know by when they need to know it and where they can find the information they need in order to master that particular skill or behavior. Because 120 days, your new hire is deciding, have I been sold the job that I bought? Or have I bought something else? Do I like my manager, or is he an idiot? Do I like the people I'm working with? Can I succeed in this job? The onboarding process is critical. It's not something that should be, read this operations manual, here's your business cards, here's your phone, congratulations, you are one. That's a disaster. If you do that, then you deserve what you tolerate. And that kind of mismanagement is malpractice. Onboarding a new hire is crucial. In the first 120 days, you need to know what they need to know by the end of day 1, by the end of day 2, 3, 4, 5, by the end of the first month, the second month, the third month, the fourth month. And that probation period identified what they must know and come with, what they must develop, what's nice to have and nice to develop, and then finally, what the red flags are. A red flag is something in the interview process that warrants further investigation. And to be honest, better no breath than bad breath in a sales position, and certainly in a management or an executive or leadership position, because a wrong hire is effectively buying a management problem down the road. If you hire the wrong salesperson, that's going to cost you a fortune in opportunity cost. When we calculate the true cost of a wrong hire, that can cost you anywhere between 35 and 125 times their salary if you're dealing with big ticket enterprise salespeople. So be really careful. Better not to hire someone who may be good, but you're just not sure, than hire someone who looks good, but isn't. I would rather hire a bad salesperson and fire them quickly than buy a mediocre person and hang on to them in the hope that maybe they'll work out. If you want to scale and achieve hypergrowth, you also need to be fair. And that's why the onboarding process is key. Having that cadence of coaching is really key, and having a good selling system that everybody adheres to, speaks the same language. It's really important. Having a strong process of accountability for you, your salespeople, your customers, and your partners is critical. And having a cadence of accountability so that on a regular basis, you meet up and you assess how well you're doing, and you tell each other the truth. You don't put lipstick on the pig. If it's a pig, it's a pig. If it's not and it's working, great. What do we need to do more of? If it isn't working, what do we need to do to adjust that in order to ensure that we're getting a better result? How do we improve? If we've reached the peak of what we can possibly achieve there, is there anything else that we need to look at in order to improve our performance, our delivery, the value that we offer to you, so that your customer experience is better and better and better? If you're a manager, you need to allow your people to hold you to account for doing your job, for being a coach, a trainer, a mentor, for understanding them, understanding their motivation. Because, like I said, everybody comes to work for their reasons, not your reasons. If you're dealing with partners, it's critically important that you have 3 levels of accountability. There's you as the vendor to the partner, you and the partner to the customer, and the customer back to both of you. Because in order for that relationship to work and for everybody to get the best out of what they're trying to achieve in partnership, you need to be honest. You need to have those systems of accountability in place. You need to be ready to tell the truth to one another and have difficult conversations, challenging conversations, to ask insightful, difficult questions. And not offended when someone challenges you or calls you out for not doing your part. It's important to have systems for territory management, account management, pursuit management, making sure that each account, each opportunity is clearly planned and mapped out. And underpinning all of that, it's crucial to have tools and systems and templates that allow you to repeat, replicate, scale, to communicate, to hand over effectively. So when sales hands over to operations, there's no distinction between what I understand as a salesperson and you understand as the operations person. We're handing over smoothly so that there's no disconnect. Because if you're going to grow fast, it's really important to iron out the kinks. If you allow that disconnect to occur, then you're going to start having customer service problems. You're going to overtrade. You're going to underperform. You're going to underdeliver. And tools and templates and systems set you free. Then it's very important to focus on skills development. Now, to be honest, skills development of all of these things is probably the easiest part. Teaching people how to do stuff is rarely that difficult. Certainly in sales, there's nothing that's complicated enough that an 8-year-old child couldn't do it. But the skills refine into behaviors, and those behaviors turned into habits, and you're always looking to elevate. So one of the things I'm hugely vehement about is that you should always be looking to improve a little bit every day. I call it the 0.5% rule. If you look at growing or improving by 0.5% a day, the compound interest effect means that you get, for every 100% you put in, you get 373% back over the course of a 270-day working year. So you take out weekends, you take out holidays, public holidays. Typically in England anyway, or the UK, we have a 270 working day year. If you do 0.5% improvement a day, which is not beyond the capability of anybody on your team, if they want to do it, that's a 374% improvement over the course of a year from everybody. They need to have clearly effective prospecting skills, because the single most important behavior of a salesperson is filling the top of the funnel with enough qualified prospects consistently. They need to develop skills for questioning in order to diagnose the prospect's problem. They need to be able to bounce the prospect's questions back so that they can understand the motive, cause, and intent behind the question, because you will lose a lot of sales if you answer questions without understanding motive, cause, and intent. You need to understand the prospect's why, and you need to be able to neutralize objections. You don't handle them, you neutralize them, so that you enable the prospect to understand why you do things the way you do, why you're so expensive, and why it's worth them investing that money because of the value and the return they're going to get. And you focus their attention on the right end of the problem, which is the return and the value, instead of the amount they're going to have to invest and the cost. You need to develop skills in interviewing, in coaching, and in particular, management training. Managers, in my experience, particularly in technology companies, are the most undertrained people in the business. The best salesperson is not necessarily the best manager. They're a very different skill set. I'm working with one client at the moment where actually the manager isn't such a great salesperson. They're not wired that way, but they are a fabulous manager. And their performance is 10 times better, 1,000% better than other managers within the group. Now, staff, you never compromise on recruitment. It's really important to make sure that you get the right people doing the right job in the right way. And that means that you need to design the candidate before you hire them. And then you design the interview process. You design an interview template. You design the questions. You develop a scorecard. You make sure that the person that you're hiring is the right person for the job and will work out. This is a process called predictive hiring, and we teach something called the search model, which looks at 6 critical areas: skills, experience, attitudes, beliefs and values, historical results, cognitive abilities, and habits. Traditionally, most people will recruit by cutting and pasting some crappy job description, and they'll focus on skills, experience, and results, which are all backward-looking, lagging indicators. What they say is Marcus might have been good once, but they don't tell you whether Marcus will work out in this job that you're hiring him for. The predictors of success are habits. What you do repeatedly in the past, you're likely to do repeatedly in the future. Habits are the best predictors of success. So you need to have a prospecting habit, a questioning habit, a disqualifying habit, a listening habit, an organizational habit in sales, a planning habit, a communicating habit, an empathy habit. You need to have these habits in place before you hire somebody, or they need to demonstrate that they have aptitude. And typically when I'm hiring salespeople, I want them to have those habits in place beforehand. I want them to have great attitude in terms of self-concept, money concept, understanding their rights as salespeople. And again, I mean, if I were to ask you what your rights are as salespeople, how many of you are going, huh? Never thought of it. Never thought of having rights. Well, you do have rights. You have rights to ask tough, challenging, demanding questions that are insightful and get the answers to those questions. You have the right to say no. You have the right to expect equal business stature. You have the right to walk away. You have the right to have fun. You have the right to get paid what you're worth. But if you don't understand you have those rights, you'll abdicate control. You have the right to set ground rules and clear boundaries. You have the right to tell people that a think it over is not an acceptable outcome. Asking for a proposal before they qualify is not an acceptable outcome. Asking for a discount is not an acceptable outcome. It's not your job to be liked. It's your job to make them comfortable with you, human being to human being. It's your job to make sure that your prospect knows that you have their best interests at heart and that you will tell the truth at all times, that you are not going to try and take advantage of them. You may be expensive. I am frequently 12 to 56 times more expensive than my competition. Let me repeat that, 12 to 56 times more expensive than my competition. And I'm proud of that, because who on earth would want to buy sales training from a sales trainer who couldn't command a massively high fee? Do you want your salespeople going out there being trained by someone? Now, blind spots. Really important to understand that there are a lot of blind spots in scaling up. The first one is that you have no process for hiring winners. You hire Joe Average and losers. You improperly onboard salespeople by basically giving them a business card, a phone, and a directory and CRM login and saying, congratulations, you are one. You fail to tie your corporate goals with their personal goals, because that's how you keep them motivated. You can't motivate anybody. Motivation is an internal force. They do it for their reasons. There's no culture of accountability. So basically you tolerate non-performance. You let things slide. People don't know where they stand. There's no common sales language. They're not focused on filling the top end of the funnel. They're not you aren't capturing best practices. I've forgotten more than I've ever learned. There's a proverb, the weakest ink is stronger than the strongest memory. I know I've forgotten so many things because I didn't write them down. If you capture those lessons, you share them, you make sure that you teach them every day in daily huddles. They're caught in some central repository. So when you're onboarding a new hire, they know where to look and it's properly indexed. Really important to capture best practices. You're failing to train and coach your management team. That's going to be the kiss of death, because managers are not trained to manage. What they do is they supervise, or they do what was done to them. Now, there is a simple rule of thumb, which is 80% of people leave their manager. They don't leave the company. They don't leave their job. They leave their manager because managers aren't trained well. They don't know how to coach. They're not coached themselves. And so they're left to sink or swim. Another blind spot, we've touched on it, is not building the bench. Not building the bench of candidates in all key positions, whether it's sales, management, marketing, whether it's finance, it doesn't matter. Managers should be recruiting constantly. Managers not knowing how to coach. Their idea of coaching is telling people what to do. That isn't coaching. That's at best mentoring, but it certainly isn't training and it certainly isn't coaching. Coaching is helping somebody else work the problem out for themselves. This is one that I see a lot in companies that grow and then just hit the edge of the chasm and collapse. They don't share their vision with those who have to implement it. They keep all their ideas close to their chest. They don't communicate what's expected. Everybody needs to know what's expected of them every day at work, how they contribute to the overall success of the team. Another problem is micromanagement, rescuing managers who foster a culture of learned helplessness. They create a culture of upward delegation. So the manager is run ragged. They become a bottleneck. People don't feel that they have autonomy or trust. And so they just say, forget it. Jim will do it. There's no point in me doing this because Jim's just going to change it all. Trust your people. Let them fail. Let them make mistakes. But make sure you build in part of your coaching and accountability, regular reviews. Make sure that they understand that they can come to you for help. But again, the rule of 3 before me is important. Try and solve the problem for yourself in 3 different ways and come to me with the lessons of failure once you've done that, and then I'll help you. And limited shared methodologies and systems. So if everybody is doing their own thing in sales, then chances are you're going to find yourself in a situation where not everyone is selling as effectively as they could. You don't share the best practices, the ideas, and so on. And then finally, have a process for excellence. Make sure that you have a planning process where change initiatives are inclusive. There's 2-way communication between you and your team. You take feedback and you act on it. How many times have you done a customer satisfaction survey and you have no idea whether anything's been done as a result of it? Make sure you take advantage of external qualified advisors who have skills that you don't have and outsource or buy in specific guidance when you need it. Make sure there is planning at every step of the way. Make sure that you have a process where you are evaluating the positions of your people. And imagine you're starting from scratch with a blank sheet of paper for every key critical role. Have no attachment to who's in the role today. Make sure that you know what roles you need in order to build your business to scale at hypergrowth rates. Make sure that you then work out, do I have the right or the wrong people in position? Should I move them around or replace them? If you're trying to achieve hypergrowth, there is no room for emotional attachment. When you have people in your team, make sure everybody is always upgrading their skills. That's the 0.5% rule. The role that they start in is going to change over time. As your business scales and grows, it's inevitable that your role as the leader will change. The sales role will change. Management positions will change. So they need to adapt and evolve. Always make sure you're recruiting good employees and you're growing your employees and you're helping drive that passion within them. Make sure you have great processes. We touched on them earlier. Processes are critical. Systems are critical. Systems set you free. They allow you to grow and scale predictably, manageably. Performetrics is performance metrics. Measure what matters. Measure the leading indicators, those things that tell you what matters. In sales, in new business sales, there are 3 critical metrics. Unique effective conversations on a daily basis, the velocity with which you move opportunities through the pipeline, either out because you've disqualified them or towards close, and the volume of opportunities moving from closable to closed. So qualified prospects moving to closable and closed. And you want 300 to 500% more at that stage in the funnel than you need in order to hit your number, because that gives you contingency and you can come in over and above target. It also means that you need to measure the number of qualified interviews that managers are having on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. You need to measure leading indicators. Lag indicators are fine for reporting purposes, and finance and the bank and shareholders want to see that stuff. But the really important stuff is the performance metrics, the ones that allow you to change direction, do more of the right behaviors, stop doing certain things when you realize that you're not getting what you want. And then passion. The fire in your belly. The fire in your belly that drives you to get up early, to come to work, to give up large chunks of your life in order to turn this business idea into something spectacular, to mentor and coach others and create passion in them. Passion isn't an event. It's a contagious state of mind. It's like an infectious disease that takes everybody to a higher level. It gives them strength. It gives them resilience. It gives them power. It allows them to embrace constant improvement and to constantly watch out for the blind spots and not be afraid of the fact that they're there, but to maintain an excellent dialogue with your customers and your clients, using tools like the client-centric satisfaction tool, the quarterly value review, making sure that you use tools in order to improve your value proposition, that you're getting your customers to fingerprint solutions so that they take ownership of those and they really feel like customer experience is at the heart of everything that you do, that they are central. And you constantly stay focused on your vision and feed that back into your planning process. So if you have any questions, now would be the time.